Lou here. Happy 4th of July! Well, it's actually the 3rd at the time this video goes up, but tomorrow is the 4th. While I'm not a patriotic person, I still think it's a fun holiday to enjoy with fireworks, popcorn, hot dogs, and those really awesome rocket popsicles. What better way to talk about such a nostalgic holiday for many than a movie set in the era that started this holiday to begin with? That's right, everybody! Today we'll be taking a look at another nostalgic movie now that YouTube is cool with it again. Roll the intro and let's get started. Now, I know a lot of you won't know, so for everyone who doesn't know, American Girl is a series of dolls made by the Pleasant Company in 1986 and later Mattel in 1991. Now, American Girl has two branches. One is the modern-day branch with some contemporary characters and girls of that particular year, and dolls you can buy to look just like you. But the main focus is the historical branch, which later named Be Forever. You see, aside from the dolls that are supposed to look just like you, every American Girl doll comes with a book about the character. The historical dolls are a character based in particular eras of time with a story about their life in that time period with elements to relate to modern day girls. In a previous video, we took a look at Samantha, who dealt with a story of classist issues, child labor, and women's rights to votes during the early Edwardian era. Yet, did I mention American Girl deals with some pretty hard-hitting topics? From a girl escaping slavery to live a normal life, a girl witnessing the Pearl Harbor attacks, to a girl in the 1980s watching the Challenger explode live on national television. Yeah, safe to say they cover some pretty hard-hitting topics from what's a recommended age of 8 to 10 years old. But I appreciate that immensely, and I'll be explaining that throughout the review. Today we'll be taking a look at Felicity. Her story revolves around the American Revolution, political parties, and what it truly means to be rebellious. Though unlike my Samantha video, I don't own Felicity's books aside from the one that my Felicity doll came with. I did read some of her books as a kid thanks to my local library where I lived, where they had a ton of American Girl books. I pretty much only ever read the books she came with, her birthday book, and a few short stories. Since I haven't read her books, I'll be relying on the American Girl wiki and my own memory for the differences section, so feel free to let me know down below if I get anything wrong. Felicity Merriman is a 10-year-old girl living in 1770s Williamsburg, Virginia, back when the United States was just called the 13 Colonies. Her father owns a general store and a boy works there by the name of Ben. Ben is your stereotypical rebellious apprentice who wants to fight in the upcoming American Revolution, but he's too young. I mean, he doesn't look young, but he's 15 in the movie and 16 in the books. I don't know how because he looks like he's in his 20s at this point, but you know how casting for movies is. No one knows what an actual teenager looks like. Felicity is by far the strongest personality out of all the American Girl characters though. Quite ahead of her time too. Felicity hates wearing dresses, loves horses, running, and speaks her mind when someone says something she doesn't like. I gotta say that Felicity's strong personality is largely the appeal here. It's pretty rare to see a child character speak their mind like that, and to see that in a period movie of all things, that's actually kind of groundbreaking. Anyway, on a walk home, which sets up all the characters, Felicity follows Ben, who's delivering some stuff for the general store, over to some small houses. She hears about a man named Jiggy Nye who's getting a horse bridle delivered, but it isn't a good thing. According to what she hears, the man physically abuses his horses and allegedly beat one of them to death. Upon meeting Jiggy Nye, he's already trying to whip a copper-colored horse that she's already named Penny, and we see he is a very angry man who definitely has some issues going on. He's also Scottish, just to show how angry he is, I guess? That night, Felicity talks about the situation only for her mother to tell her that she's going to go to, Gentlewoman classes? Basically back then, young girls would attend classes for writing, dancing, stitchery, tea serving, and everything else society forced onto women back then. At least it's not so bad thanks to her new friend, Elizabeth Cole. Elizabeth and her sister Annabelle are from England and are loyal to the King of England, while most people Felicity knows want the colonies to be their own nation away from the king. We also learned that apparently refusing tea or treats is a big fucking no-no because it's apparently rude. This will come back later in a kind of badass way, actually. A few days later, Felicity goes to see Penny because she believes she could tame her since she's the only one who understands that Penny is not a wild and crazy horse, but a free spirit like herself. Though she has to do it in secret or else she'll get in huge trouble not only from Jiggy Nye, but from her parents too. Though as Felicity is learning what it means to break something away from an abusive owner, there's a parallel to this in the form of Felicity's grandfather and father arguing over the American Revolution. This is where we learn the political party at the time of Loyalists and Patriots. Felicity's grandfather, Elizabeth's family are all Loyalists who believe the colonies should be ruled under the king, while her father, Ben, and the rest of her family are Patriots who believe the colonies should be their own United States. It's up to Felicity throughout the movie and in the books which political side she agrees with. Oddly enough, something many of us do while we're growing up. Now here's where the most iconic moments come in. When Felicity finds Ben's pants and decides she'll wear them in secret as she goes to train Penny. On one particular night, Jiggy Nye drunkenly shouts that he'll give the horse to anyone who can ride her because she's untamable in his eyes, which makes Felicity believe that if she shows she can ride Penny, Jiggy Nye will just give Penny over to her. This is when, like the badass she is, Felicity shows up to her house riding Penny. Obviously, Jiggy Nye is pissed, and Felicity's father can't buy Penny from him, and he's pissed too, so he can't reason with Nye. That's when Jiggy Nye threatens to kill Penny if he sees Felicity anywhere near Penny again, which means there's only one thing Felicity can do if she can't keep Penny, and that's free her. She frees Penny that night where the horse flees into the woods, never to be seen again, apparently. Kinda speeding back to her tea lessons, after freeing Penny and realizing how similar her experience with Penny was to the colonies and the king, she decides to become a patriot and now refuses to drink tea during these lady lessons. This leaves Elizabeth and Felicity at a crossroads in their friendship because of their vastly different political parties. But they still agree to be friends as they try to work this gap between them. Though as summer is approaching, Felicity is getting ready to visit her grandfather until she's told that Ben went missing. This is a huge no-no apparently because Ben is contracted to be an apprentice for the next 4 years. I don't know why he couldn't just wait those years, but you know how teenagers are, I guess. At her grandfather's plantation, which, yes, is just as uncomfortable to picture knowing what's happening during this time period at plantations. We're also hastily told that Felicity's mother is pregnant and her father's health is apparently not the best. As Felicity hangs out with her grandfather at the stables, it turns out that her grandfather found Penny, and that means Penny is now her horse. He tells her not to worry about Nye, and it looks like everything is going pretty well for Felicity right now, aside from Ben missing. Though upon hearing rumors of bounty hunters searching for Ben and finding a napkin with an emergency note on it, Felicity grabs everything, takes Penny, and hurries off into the woods to find Ben. She convinces Ben to come home where he does, where he and Felicity's father rework the contract so that when Ben turns 16, if he wants to be a soldier, he can do so. All's well that ends well until Felicity's grandfather dies near the end of the summer. I have to admit, Felicity's grandfather's death actually hit me a little when watching it. I'm not comfortable going into it obviously, but I have to admit that the scene hits different after seeing the movie all these years later. Though what about Penny? Well, I guess Jiggy Nye was probably too drunk to register her as his property, so I guess Felicity's grandfather registered Penny, and then he put Penny in his will to give to Felicity? I'm not sure actually. The movie never explains what's stopping Nye from showing up and claiming Penny again, unless they just keep her in secret? I have no idea. That fall, Felicity meets up with Elizabeth again, who she hasn't seen for months. Elizabeth is pissed at Felicity's chosen political party because a bunch of patriots jailed a bunch of loyalists, including Elizabeth's father. Felicity asks her dad, who has political connections due to being a business owner of a very successful general store, to free Mr. Cole and he pretty much does. When Felicity goes to visit Elizabeth's father, she spots Jiggy Nye there. I guess the reason there wasn't a need to worry about Jiggy Nye coming back was probably because he got locked up for a time for being an angry, drunk dick to people. Seeing Jiggy Nye in a pitiful situation makes Felicity's mind and heart open up to him. Earlier we find out through some gossip from Felicity's father that Jiggy Nye was once a very popular and well-liked horse breeder until his wife died, where he became an angry alcoholic that we've seen him as throughout the entire movie. I mean, if Jiggy Nye wasn't an animal abuser, I can see where Felicity is coming from, but I don't know. Redeeming a guy who clearly starved and beat his horses to death was probably some pretty poor judgment. Though as Felicity's mom is pregnant, we find out Penny is going to have a baby too. Felicity and Elizabeth also mend their friendship by promising to be faithful friends forever be, even as soldiers march outside their houses. Felicity is also invited to the Christmas ball and delivers some food and blankets to Jiggy Nye, which slowly melts his cold heart. Just as things are going right though, trouble hits for Felicity again. Felicity's mom gives birth, and it was a very difficult pregnancy and delivery, to a point where her mother very clearly almost died giving birth to Polly, her baby sister. She is obviously terrified that her mother is going to die like her grandfather, and we finally get a moment in this movie to grasp over the tense situation. We basically see Felicity having to pick up everything and be the adult of the house, all the while terrified over just the thought of losing her mom. This is especially hard to see this 10-year-old girl basically being the mom of the house for her little sister, brother, and newborn sister. This scene was surprisingly heavy, watching this little girl basically begging that her mother doesn't die. It's presumably weeks later that her mother finally recovers, relieving Felicity that her mom is finally in good health again. Considering the Merrimans have 4 kids now though, I'd like to think they don't end up having another kid, because that would probably kill Felicity's mom. Though tonight is Christmas Eve, which means Felicity has to hurry for the Christmas ball. Luckily, her mom got better just in time, because now she heads over to the Christmas ball. Although this takes place during Christmas, it doesn't quite feel very Christmassy, and that's probably due to the massive differences in how Christmas was celebrated aesthetically prior to the Victorian era with books like A Christmas Carol. On her way home, she decides to visit Penny before heading inside, where it turns out Penny is giving birth. Except she's having trouble, and only her father and Jiggy Nye right now know how to deliver horses. Jiggy Nye was released from prison some time ago, so Felicity begs for his help to deliver Penny's baby because Penny is her baby and she doesn't want to lose her. It seems Nye really changed a lot thanks to prison and Felicity's kindness, probably sobering up and agreeing to help in delivering Penny's baby. That very Christmas morning, Penny finally gives birth to a pretty strong and healthy foal. Felicity and Ben see how strong and independent he already is, like a Patriot soldier, so Felicity decides to name him Patriot. Jiggy Nye, now a sober man, joins in for Christmas dinner where everyone has a good time. A scene that shows that our views don't matter, rather our hearts and how we treat others that matter. The movie ends with Felicity and Elizabeth watching the carolers. Overall, a pretty sweet end. Now, while I do like how hard-hitting this movie is in terms of grief, rebellion, independence, and loyalty, what I don't like is how fast-paced the movie is. Unlike Samantha from a previous video, whose books were mostly technically filler, Felicity's books are very story-heavy. I feel like it'll drop stuff like Felicity freeing Penny, and we don't get a true moment to take in the tension, to see how hurt Felicity is to let her go. Instead, we're just skipping over to the next scene. This isn't like in the books where Penny doesn't return until book 4 in the series, so we read how Felicity is thinking of Penny every single day. Instead, we're rushed to Felicity's grandfather finding Penny again. That kind of plot is especially damaging for Felicity's grandfather, whose death is supposed to be very hard-hitting. Overall, Felicity's story is badass, but I can't totally say some things age super well, especially the element about political parties, and it does rush through the story of the books pretty quickly to the point of some whiplash, actually. Now, Shailene Woodley is technically the most famous actress to play an American Girl character in these stories of historical films. Trust me, I will get to Girl of the Year films, but right now we're focusing on historicals. Aside from Abigail Breslin as Kit Kittredge, Shailene Woodley is a pretty big, but she's primarily known for her series The Secret Life of an American Teenager, Tristan Divergence, and Hazel from The Fault in Our Stars. I have to say she's a pretty good actress in the movie despite being like 12 or something when she did this. She's a perfect balance of Felicity's childlessness and her headstrong side. It's pretty good, and just like Anna Sophia Robb as Samantha, I can't picture anyone else playing Felicity Merriman. Hell, she actually kind of looks like how Felicity is illustrated in some scenes too. Katie Henney would play Elizabeth Cole, and unlike Nellie in the last video, Elizabeth is not a central character in the Felicity stories aside from showing us that two sides can still be friends. Despite the very little scenes she's in, I thought she did a pretty good job. Her British accent wasn't the best, but when is a British accent accurate in films anyway? Pretty good actress despite how young she was filming this movie. Kevin Zegers would play Ben, and let me just say hello. I mean, he's pretty, not gonna lie fam. Anyway, that aside, I think he did an alright job as Ben. He's a lot calmer than how Ben is usually portrayed in the books, probably because he was already in his 20s when playing Ben, so that kind of a frustrated teenager energy was probably harder to portray, you know, when an adult is playing a kid. Unlike a lot of actors in this movie, he's still acting and apparently on a TV show right now, so that's a thing. John Schneider and Maricia Gay Harden would play Felicity's parents. I think they did a pretty good job. I'll be going over changes between the books and movies in a moment, but I think Marvia in particular did a good job as Felicity's mom. She managed to come across a lot more gentle than how she was written in the books, actually. David Garter would play Felicity's grandfather, and although his time in the movie is brief, I liked him. He was a very sweet character, and I think is a perfect actor for Felicity's grandfather who's gentle and supports Felicity in everything she does. Though Felicity's grandfather is apparently British, yet doesn't have an accent, so that's weird. But again, apparently Hollywood and acting in general struggles to be British, I guess. The rest of the cast is overall pretty good. A lot of the acting feels accurate for the time period, and everyone does a pretty good job at remaining polite and using older speech. I would say Jiggy Nye is good, but from the guy's IMDb page, he pretty much is made for scruffy crazy dudes, so no wonder he did a good job. Overall, the acting is pretty good. Again, no one needed to put this energy into a movie made primarily for kids, but they did, and it always leaves me impressed with these American Girl films. When Felicity meets Penny, trains, and frees her, which is the plot of Meet Felicity, she has not met Elizabeth yet. Felicity's grandfather is also not there to give Felicity advice, as the story doesn't start on Felicity's 10th birthday in April 1774, rather it starts in the fall of that year. Miss Manderley, Felicity's Gentlewoman teacher, is also much older in the books. In the second book, she's an elderly woman who never married, once a maid to nobles, I believe, who teaches girls in the colonies about ladylike things. Yes, that's as cringy as it sounds. In the movie, she's a much younger woman, like a lot younger. The entire Christmas scene with Felicity's mother getting sick actually happens much earlier in the books. Felicity's mother gets sick while making her Christmas dress, like really badly sick. The ball also happens after Christmas instead of on Christmas Eve. Aside from Penny, Felicity also has a pet lamb named Posy that she got from her grandfather as a gift, and a guitar. Ben is 16 in the books, not sure why they aged him down in the movie when the actor didn't look young at all, so that's a thing. And finally, there were no issues with Felicity's mother giving birth, and her grandfather actually dies shortly after Polly is born. It's supposed to be a tragically sad, one life ends, another begins sort of thing. Felicity's mom also doesn't get sick after giving birth. In fact, there's a short story all about when Polly was born, so that's a thing. Felicity's mother is also a lot stricter and more vocal about Felicity being unladylike, as she continues to argue a lot with her mother in the books rather than in the movie. Rose and Marcus are also portrayed as regular servants and workers in the film instead of, you know. It's sort of weird. It does something similar to Samantha's books where it takes the most important story elements and stitches them together with some new scenes to put them all together. Though in the case of Felicity, it's sort of backwards. If I had to guess the structure, it would be meet Felicity and Happy Birthday Felicity at the same time. Felicity learns a lesson, Felicity saves the day, Felicity's surprise, and changes for Felicity all happening sewn together with bits and pieces thrown from her short story collection somewhere. Overall, it's accurate for the most part, but it does speed up the pace of the books, which kinda ruins the tension we're supposed to feel. Now, it's not like I don't like this movie, I still do love it. Felicity has always been a character I love from the American Girls historical collection. Back in my day, it was pretty rare to come across a character my age who took charge and stood for what she believed in while adults were basically telling her to shut up, while also remaining loyal to those you love. Even if some things didn't age too well, Felicity's grandfather owning a plantation and the political parties thing, I still think this is a pretty good movie. The 1770s is an era of fashion I really like. I mean, I don't love it like I do the Victorian era or the 1920s, but you have to admit that the regal gowns and tea sets really do look nice on screen. If you want to see the rare opportunity of a badass, headstrong young character basically stealing a horse, overthrowing government, and freeing people from prison, I'd recommend Felicity's movie. Next time I review American Girl movies, we're gonna shine our tap dance shoes and get our jazz hands out because we're gonna go back to the 1940s to take a look at Molly McIntyre. Let me know down below what you think. Are you excited to see me talk about other American Girl movies? Is there any American Girl character who's your favorite? As always, let me know down below. Hey guys, thanks for watching! If you liked the video, be sure to give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing if you're new. And if any older new subs would like to help support the channel in any possible way, my Ko-fi page is down below in the description along with all of my social media. For any subscribers, new or old, who would like to help with video ideas or maybe just want to talk about anime or something, then I have a fan server linked down below. See you next time!